In the beginning of it, we're going to have 3 questions. They're not that bad. Just if someone does show up live, I get to gauge where they're at. I get to adjust my plans accordingly. If they're really weak, I'm going to, pedal back a little bit, explain some stuff. If they're really strong, I might get a bit more in depth, get a bit more into that nice meat of the lesson, just really tear into it, get some of the good protein out of the lesson, as you would often do with a lesson. After those questions, we're going to go on to the very beginning of the Industrial Revolution. It was a pretty crazy time, and there was an Industrial Revolution going on. Isn't that absolutely mad? After that, if something starts and it's good, it's going to go somewhere. Someone else is going to think, I want to do that too. And that absolutely happened. It grew, it diffused, and now it's everywhere. How did that happen? How did it start happening? We're going to talk about it. Then we're going to talk about some new technologies. It wouldn't be an industrial revolution if nothing changed, would it? A lot of things changed. An incredible amount of things changed, and those were basically all technological. And then we're going to go on to why it was where it was and why it is where it is. We're going to go on what happened because of that. Because the Industrial Revolution definitely spread to a few particular areas for a long time. And that had some very, very strong effects. Europe, I'm sure you know, dominated for a massive amount of recent history. Hint, hint, it was this. After that, we're going to have 3 more practice questions, see what you've learned, see what you didn't learn, see how good or bad of a job I've done. Maybe I've done atrocious and you get them all wrong. Maybe I've done great. You don't even need to wait for the cool pause time. You just go. You're just that good at it. Good job. After that, probably not a Q&A, but if someone shows up, we're going to do a quick open Q&A, see what they want to see and what they've been going over. Now, with all of that over, we can really start getting into this lesson. The greetings have ended. It's lesson time. Oh boy, here we go. Pre-stream knowledge, question 1. The question 1 of question. It is the question, what industry spurred the development of the Industrial Revolution? There was definitely one very particular one. Why did they make factories? What did they want to make with the factories? That is the question you must answer. And seeing as you're watching on the VOD and not on the stream, you're going to probably want to pause that if you don't have the answer right now. And now that you've thought of a really wonderful answer, you're going to want to have unpaused it, which I'm sure you have because you're listening to me tell you to unpause it. Great job. That was some nice handiwork when you unpaused the stream, and even finer craftsmanship when you thought of the crazy answer. And I assure you it is right, because what you thought of was, of course, textiles. Textiles absolutely drove this almost single-handedly. They were like, man, clothes are crazy, and we can sell those. But everyone's making clothes at their house. What's going on? I'm going to make a factory, and it's going to be absolutely awesome. And they did it. And it worked. Second question, in what country did the Industrial Revolution begin? Again, this can only start in one place. Maybe it is developed independently somewhere else. I don't believe that is the case here. There's a country where it started. I want you to know the country. You probably know the country. You're a very smart individual. So, just in case you haven't already thought of it, being as smart as you are, I'll give you some time to think by pausing it right now. Again, just outstanding. I've never seen someone think of such a complicated network of information in such a short amount of time. That was incredible. I don't know how you did it, but you did it. And you, of course, arrived at the answer of Great Britain. I apologize, I'm feeling a little sick. You, of course, arrived at the answer of Great Britain. That is the country where it began. That is the country where it spread from. If you really want to go crazy in depth, you thought so hard, because I know you did. You might want to say England, maybe even Northern England, because you're just big brain. This is a 200 IQ move, honestly. That was incredible. The final question of the pre-stream knowledge. You've made it so far. You've done incredibly. And here we are. You're almost there. This is the very end of your journey, of your quest. What was the primary source of power at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution? I know you're thinking, come on, Cody, you got to give me a better question than that. That's awful. It's so easy. I already know the answer. And I know, and I'm so sorry, because you are the big brain. But I'm still going to give you a second to pause, because I know you might have the answer, but you want to have the answer. You're going to go through just a massive web, and you're going to think of that web and all of the incredible intricacies right now. And now you're back. How does it feel? It probably feels like you're back, watching a great Fiveable stream. I'm your host, Cody Austin, and you have the answer. And what an answer it is. The primary source of power at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution was, of course, water and wind. Either of those were really acceptable, but what you're really going to want to go for is water. Everything was along a river, and you knew that. You taught me that through the camera. You on the other side of there, you thought so hard. I didn't know the answer to this question. You thought so hard. I perceived it. I received your big brain waves, and I know the answer was water. They used water wheels to power the factories. They'd spin these big belts, and it would spin. That's nice. Don't get sick. It's been weaving machines, and they'd make things. Great things. Things like clothes. I'm a big fan of them, personally. I don't know why this is happening. I was fine all day. I'm really sorry for all of my sniffle breaks, but I can't do anything about it at this point. My body just decided now was a great time to get sniffles, but bad, and I can't breathe. So the next part of the stream, as I'm sure you remember, is the start of the Industrial Revolution. Because it says it right here. Well, I mean, what else would we be doing? More pre-stream knowledge? No. It is time for the start of the Industrial Revolution. It's beginning right now. It started. What started the Industrial Revolution? Remember when we were talking about textiles about 15 seconds ago? They're back. The textile industry. Textiles are just fabric that was used to create clothes. You'd make your shirts out of them, your dresses out of them, your pants out of them. They're clothes. You need clothes. Clothes are pretty cool. And they used to be made in these things called cottage industries. You may call it the putting out system, in which an employer, a manufacturer, I guess you could call them, in a sense, I feel awful, would bring the raw materials, let me stop saying I'm sorry, to his employees' home. And now this employee has all these mounds of wool or whatever, cotton, and they got to make it into textiles, it'd be wool, at their house, and then they would give it back to the employer and get paid per piece of clothing that they created, something called piecemeal rather than wages, which would be the hours they worked. They were paid for every shirt they made. We'll go with that. And at this time, clothes were hard to make because of this. This is not efficient. Going out to all of your employees that can be spread all over the place, having them make it, you're not keeping watch on them. You gotta pay them for a piece of clothing while they can make a whole bunch of clothes in 1 hour. If they really, really went for it, they had better tools instead of just sitting in their house and throwing rocks at wool until it became a shirt. So clothes were very expensive because they were not very easy to make. They weren't awful, but they certainly weren't, give me 3 minutes, I'll get you a full outfit. And this meant that getting a big wardrobe for the peasantry, anyone not real up there, was very hard. So obviously this is something you want to change. If clothes are expensive and I can't have that many clothes because of it, but I want more clothes because I've got 2 outfits and they're both all brown, and I'm pretty sure this one isn't even clothes anymore, and I've just forgotten what wearing clothes is like, and I'm not wearing a shirt anymore. Every morning I just go into my closet and put on nothing, and I walk out with a pair of pants that are 25 years old and they're starting to rip all up in the feet, and I fall down and I cut my, it's not a good time. So there's a very big demand for this. If I could have more clothes, I would jump on the opportunity. It'd be so nice if I could just have more clothes. So this was the first industry to really get capitalized on. It was very easy to industrialize because you're just spinning cotton and then weaving cotton. And there's a big demand for it. And I don't know why I wrote much more expensive. That's definitely an error on my part. Once clothes got industrialized, they were a lot cheaper, not more expensive. That should say much less expensive. And suddenly everyone can have clothes. Me right here, I'm sitting here, I've got like at least 3 shirts, and that's more than 2. So that's pretty cool. We can already see the effect of it there through the industry that really took it off. It was textiles. If you're wondering where this came from, where did they get all this cotton? obviously, the UK had a lot of cotton coming from South America, and they also had it in India. So they had the materials to really get this going, but they didn't have the ability to get it going at a speed where it would be worth taking over mass amount of materials, because like one shipment could last you a while. Why would I want to constantly be bringing in massive amount of cotton if nothing's going to be made with it for a while? So everything was set for this to be the industry, as opposed to, I don't know, weapons smithing or anything like that, because there's a lot lower of demand and it's a lot harder. And there's not like an abundance of materials I can get right now. A cotton farm, you go out there, you get your cotton. This is massive amounts of cotton everywhere. Oh my God. You bring it over. So this obviously started in Britain, as we said in the pre-stream knowledge. Began in northern England, which makes sense because sheep. They had sheep there. And you need sheep for wool. You need wool for textiles. So there was a little bit of, tiny factories going on there. Not too much caring about it. All of these factories had to be built along a river, which was great for Britain because Britain has lots of rivers. Britain's got rivers everywhere. If I want to make a factory, it's got to be along a river. Nothing has changed. I can still put a factory anywhere I want to. But they were still fixated to along these rivers. There were plenty of them. They weren't a worry of running out of space, but it definitely influenced how things developed from there, since everything was along a river. And the reason they were like this is because, of course, they had to use water wheels. Once someone realized they put their factories here because they got to get goods, and walking with all this wool or cotton or whatever you got is really annoying. So what if I just put it on a boat and shipped it down here? And then they were like, there's water here anyways. If it's moving, I can put a big paddle in here and it's going to spin around. And if something's spinning around, there's movement. I can put that on a belt. It's the thing I'm using to spin this cotton spins. I can get it to spin through that water. And that was a massive revelation. And that made things go a lot faster. So not only now did you have the employees coming to you, a lot more efficient. You didn't have to, bike with a hamster. You didn't have to press pedals to move any looms. You just, the water did it. And you were feeling pretty good about yourself. And then from northern England, where it started because sheep, this just blew up in central England because they had some sheep too, and they had people, and they had the startings of a city that was called Manchester. And sheep, they weren't hard to get there. They brought in some sheep. This was a center of everywhere, so no one's going to be really out of their way to move in here and provide labor for these factories. It just blew up in central England, and that became a very big center of everything. The only thing that could really top that out is Manchester's still a massive city today because everything just blew up there. Because it was the center of everything. It wasn't hard to get the materials there. There were rivers there. Everything was set, just like how everything was set for the textiles to be the industry. Everything was set for central England to be the place. They had the rivers. They had a location that made people willing to go there. They had the ability to get the sheep they need to make textiles that were just set from the very beginning. Here's a map. Industrial Revolution, Great Britain, 1851. We've really gotten into it now. The Industrial Revolution's quite underway. It went from 1750 to 1900. This is 100 years in. You can see, obviously, Britain. I don't know, I went back here. Britain was quite big on this because that's not important. I'll get to that later. You can see here, they've got resources. So once they get textiles going, they can get more things going. Once they realize how well this works, they can industrialize so many more parts of their economy. We got sheep. How are we getting the sheep? This crazy thing called factories. I guess you wouldn't be getting sheep, you'd be getting the clothes. What's a factory? It's this little building that just makes incredible amounts of goods. It's honestly amazing. What if we did that for bread, for sword, for gun? I'm going to gun you if you don't. So he did it. And now they're everywhere. They just were able to produce everything. Iron ore can make strong stuff. They can make refined goods. If I want to make something out of steel, I got to get it from iron. If I want to make something out of metal, I'm probably getting it from iron if we're in England. They had the ability to get cotton where they were, and sheep, as you can see, there are just sheep all over the place. There's so many sheep. A lot of them are in these places, like I said. This is where you would really start to see it. As you can see, a lot of his stuff is around Manchester. They got all these rivers here. You can put stuff by. And then once this has been going off for a while, you just start to see stuff pop up around the place. But around Manchester is just massive. Look at the circle of dots surrounding it. And machinery, because this is 1851, you start to see, what do I do? Oh, I can undo that very easily. This is my bad moment. Let me make sure it didn't mess up the stream, but I don't believe it should. Didn't. It did. The game rewards a skilled player, and the game is Google Slides. As you can see, they had just everything they needed. They had everything they needed to start, everything they needed to really take it to the next level until they got taken over by America in the second industrial revolution. That's not important. As you can see in the first one, they were very set, and they set up a lot of things because of it. And you can see where it's centered. Obviously, Middle England did quite well. So obviously, this didn't stay in the UK, in Great Britain, because you're watching this on a computer and you're probably not from the UK. I might assume. So how did this grow? How did this diffuse out of it? We'll just go constant by constant. A lot of these are going to be focused on countries, so we'll talk more about it at the cool map we get at the end of this section. The Americas was slightly delayed because the UK really didn't want this getting out, and they really, really didn't want America to have it. The US, not on my watch. You guys aren't allowed. Because obviously, Britain and the US weren't big fans of each other after that little thing I'm sure you heard of called the Revolutionary War. And then it didn't go much better later. Maybe you've heard of the War of 1812. Obviously, the US and the UK weren't very great buddies at this point. The UK didn't want them to do this because this is a massive leg up on them. Why would they want the US to be able to even that out? So they were keeping it secret. They weren't telling anyone. And then this cool guy called Samuel Slater ruined all of this for the UK. He just pirated a factory. He went to the UK. They were making sure he's really hush-hush. So they don't want anyone to know about this. He goes to a factory. He steals the design and he builds a new one. He was the guy who built the US's first mill. It was pretty cool, and then we industrialized at the same time as Northern England because of it. The UK really did not manage to keep the secret very long. Another important thing you should note about the Industrial Revolution in the US is something called the Boston Associates. They were big in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in the US. They were the Google at the time, and they owned a lot of factories, and they started to do something where they would hire young uneducated farm girls, so they could pay them significantly less. Because I mean, it's a woman. Why would I pay them the same as a man? They thought. But this wasn't really all the way one way, because it also was an allure for these young farm girls, because it meant they could get out of the very male-dominated households at the time. And that sort of continued to do a thing until there were some strikes, and they had a big downfall, and now you don't really hear of Boston Associates that often anymore. In Europe, it reached Northern Europe, at least, at about the same time as the US. 1820s, and this just spread very fast in the beginning. Northern France got a hold of it, and obviously if it's in France, why would it stay in one area of France? Because they all know about it, and they can do this, and that's going great over there. I want to do that too. So it spreads northward in France, it spreads eastward in Germany, it spreads through, obviously, the Benelux very, very quickly, and then it loses steam. Russia got hit by this real hard with it losing steam and industrialized extremely late. They were still a very weak industrial economy at the turn of the First World War, and they had a massive issue with just having peasantry that could just do crops, and that was about it. Spain and southern Italy, you still see the effects. Spain doesn't have a very high GDP. Southern Italy wants to secede from Northern Italy because they're so unindustrialized, because it hit them so late. It's all really concentrated in the north of the country. And that's all just it getting there, spreading like wildfire, and then just stopping. Really, really slowing down after a bit. In Asia was really reluctant to industrialize because most of them were isolationist at the time of this. China had been isolationist for a little while, Japan too. And then America said, knock, knock, Japan, it's time to trade. And they went to war with them for being isolationist, which made them have to end it. And once you've ended that, you have to cope with being in the global community. You can't just retreat back into your hidey hole, because you saw how that went last time, and the peace treaty said, you're not allowed to do that, you're trading with us. And because of this, there was a little civil war at some point about Japanese conservatives and the ones who wanted to really go ahead and enter this global community as a real competitor, and those who wanted to push forward won. Japan industrialized extremely early for an Asian country. They were way ahead of everyone else. And because of this, they want to try and become the new dominant power, not just because they already were, they industrialized. They wanted it to show. They weren't going to sit on their island and be more powerful. They were going to spread out. This culminated in the Second Sino-Japanese War, where they had their colonial holdings. This was the only real colonial power in Asia at the time. And there wasn't actually European holdings. And they went to war with China again because they already had Manchukuo, they had Manchukuo, they had Korea, and they wanted to just wipe China out of the picture. They wanted to be the power. They wanted to hold all of Asia. This didn't work very well, and they got flattened. It's after a very long struggle. They almost beat China at some point, and then China started pushing them back, and it became this back and forth thing. And America said knock, knock, and dropped a couple nukes on them. I'm sure you've heard of that. Russia invaded Manchukuo. Didn't go very well for them at the end. China industrialized very late, considering all things, for just a country in general. For Asia, they were about on time. The latter half of the 20th century, so you went from an agrarian economy with a great leap forward, led to everyone starving to death, to big boy power that we see them today. China is very relevant in world politics now. Because of this, they industrialized, and they industrialized hard. They were very far behind, and they made a big leap to try and catch up. And it certainly worked, I would suppose, because they're a big player now. Japan isn't really on their level anymore after everyone got to catch up with them. Africa was in a bit of a weird place because Europe owned them. And Europe wasn't interested in building factories there. Why would they? They had all the factories at home to better the lives of their people. They were in Africa to get the resources out of it. So any ideas of industry or actually building the countries was heavily neglected by the imperial powers. South Africa was the one big exception to this. A lot of it was because Great Britain liked South Africa because it had the same climate as Great Britain. So there was a lot more people that were willing to actually go from Great Britain to there, settle it. And once British people are there, you have a more vested interest in building that up. So South Africa was like the only up there country you see in sub-Saharan Africa. Northern Africa is definitely a better place. That was kind of just because what am I thinking of? Infrastructure there worked for them. They're a big desert. They don't need a winding thing to connect all these factories. They need a road that connects the important parts. And that worked because that's exactly what the colonial powers needed. So it worked out for North Africa. It really didn't work out for sub-Saharan Africa, except the one exception, South Africa. And you also see South Africa as a country is more powerful. They tend to get more autonomy. So South Africa was granted, I guess, pseudo-independence. In the Second World War, they were their own thing had been for a little while. And they just kind of went along because they're a British territory, but they had their own government. Southern Nigeria did industrialize quite a bit. You would normally see this around Lagos because Lagos is just a massive city. And where there's massive cities, there has to be something for the people to do. You can't farm in your apartment floor, so you have to be going there for work. There has to be work created there. They definitely have a shortage of work because it's just so big for the country. But it definitely did industrialize around there significantly later than everything else. Here's a map. This is where we'll talk on some things. South America, I didn't get a whole lot on that. Mexico, too. Mexico is just a nice place because it could try to be buddy-buddy with the United States, and it had its ups and downs there. But because it could be influenced and have influence in areas of the United States. A lot of Mexico was very influenced. They could industrialize quite early, all things considered. Brazil and just South America in general was really neglected by the Spanish, and they were the colonial leaders at the time, and then it all collapsed. And the reason Spain neglected it is because it was colonized so early that there was not a industrial revolution to speak of at the time. And as you went forward, they were just there to get gold. Why would you build industry there? And then it collapsed a little bit after the American Revolution. There wasn't a whole lot you could do there, but they were certainly held back. Furthermore, by the Monroe Doctrine, which stated, don't mess with South America, Europe, and we're not going to mess with you. But it also said, South America, don't talk to Europe, because we're your buddy now. You don't need to go over there. So South America wouldn't want to go over there. They didn't receive a lot of this crazy stuff until later. Obviously, you can see South Africa down there. Yeah, they got it pretty early for Africa. China got it pretty late. Japan got it very early, all things considered. You can see the very fast burnout in Europe. It definitely got to Sweden quite early because Sweden was always just one of the front runners. They wanted to be up there. You could see that through most of their history, they were pretty advanced. And in stuff like the 30 Years' War, they were the most advanced. They always tried to keep up with that. It reached the Middle East much in the same way as it reached Europe. It just burned out. And it crawled over there. There isn't a lot of crazy stuff going on there. Not a lot of outside influence. The Ottomans were just far enough away where that reached them late. Australia, much like America, wasn't built there to get free labor. That was built there to put English people. So the English had more of a investment in it, and that industrialized quite early, along with New Zealand. The Philippines, that was the same Spain problem, but it got taken over by America. So they were like, yeah, here you go. Here's some industry. I hope you like it. India was sort of needed because there's so many people there. Why would you not try to use that stuff? And they were such a big producer of things. But there wasn't a whole lot of raw materials you could really nab up from there, other than, like the Asian spice trades. But that Asian spice trade sort of died out at some point, and they didn't need to just build a big road that took from the spice to the ocean so it could go back to Britain. New technologies. As I said, it's not a revolution if nothing new is made. A lot of this stuff was technological. When we're looking at power, obviously in the beginning, windmills and water mills were used because instead of, pressing these pedals to make my loom spin, I can just get nature to do it for me. And that's a lot less effort. It's a lot more energy efficient. Because now I don't have to waste all my energy doing that. And that's just better. Less energy is being used by the workers. You just get that for free. That river is always going. Who cares if you put a paddle in it? After a little bit, steam engines were invented. It was cool. This let you use stuff like we'll get to that in a second. This just let you use a lot of new methods for transportation, definitely. You could find some use for it in factories. It definitely wasn't as useful as just, there's a river there. We're already by the river, and I don't have to put fuel in the river, so I'm just going to let the river do it. But there were definitely some circumstances where that would be very useful. The steam engine's invention really cemented that industrialized countries were the big boys. Because once you get a steam engine, you can get all kinds of crazy stuff. You can start getting trains, you can start getting steamboats, you can start getting boats that have armor on them and are real big, and have like actual proper modern cannons. And it started this sort of industrial growth, because you could argue this sort of started with the Industrial Revolution or the Agricultural Revolution in general. But I would say the steam engines were really the first thing where, like, we made this, and this is going to let us make this faster, and that's going to let us make this faster. And it just kept going. It's still going today. We're advancing at a never-before-seen rate. I would say it started with something like this. You could argue a couple different points. Electricity was adopted. It was really the basis of all modern things, electricity also gave you stuff like light bulbs. It was definitely very useful in your factories, unlike the steam engine where you could argue like, yeah, putting this engine on my loom would be nice or whatever, but there's a river right there. This was way better than whatever you had before. I don't care what it was. This was just more useful. Get off the river. We have electricity. The light bulb let you work around the clock. It slightly improved worker safety, which is a big issue during the Industrial Revolution. This just really set you off. As I said, the steam engine started Industrial Revolution. Steam engine, electricity very soon after that, and then you just went crazy. It was really going. Textile inventions, a thing for gathering cotton was the cotton gin. This, like, I think it was 4 times more productive than picking and cleaning cotton, because when you get cotton, there's all this stuff in it, and you have to like actually pick it out, and that's going to take a lot of time. I can put it in this machine and spin the wheel for 2 seconds, and I've got this perfectly cleaned cotton. How'd that happen? I used the cotton gin. Because why would you want to do something so time-consuming if this is one of the simplest things to mechanize? A weird side effect of this is that while you would assume this would sort of ease the toil of a lot of the development behind it was for this, easing the toil of slaves in the U.S., this coincided with a massive spike in the slave trade, because if that one slave can do like a kilometer of land by himself, I can buy 100 more kilometers of land, and this is going to be so efficient. I'm going to make so much money that I'm not going to pay them with. So that was a unforeseen side effect of it, I suppose, and it is usually surprising for people to learn about. The spinning jenny, this was one of the very early things, and it was a big one. This was reiterated on time and time again throughout the entirety of it. This multiplied your productivity by 8. A big problem with cotton industries was that it took 4 spinners to keep 1 weaver busy. Now 1 spinner could keep 2 weavers busy. And that was pretty good. So the original one, it was just 8 threads, 1 time, 1 guy doing it. And then this was later upgraded because someone put a wheel in that water and they were like, my God, it's spinning. So that worked out. And then you got the spinning mule, which was water powered, and the fibers it made were just way better, way more of the time, or way more often, I would suppose. Moving on to transportation and communications. Transportation, as I said, the steam engine was massive in this. This is what made the new transportation things, really. But as you got all of this output coming from these factories, because it's so much more efficient than it used to be, you need a way to take all of this and put it somewhere. Take it to where you want to sell it, take it to where you want to store it. I don't care what you're doing, you need to get it there. So this made better transportation very much so a necessity, and the steam engine gave you the option to get better transportation. First locomotive, very early, was made in 1804. First steamboat was made in 1807. Steamboat was very good, as I said, because a lot of these early on were centered around rivers. And if it's already there because you want to get supplies, then you can go this way unless the wind wants to help you. Now I just go up and down the river however I want. It's very easy. It's very fast. That massively improved the efficiency of it. The locomotive took everything off. You don't even need to be by a river for the supplies because now there's railways, and railways are going to be very, very much more influential than these rivers after that. And they're going to massively influence how cities pop up, how factories pop up, and how everything moves. Because if I build a rail line from city to city, now this is just a great spot for city. And that very much influenced because this makes jobs now. That can make new factories here. It's quite good for determining how things were going to produce. All of these things that were transporting your goods made it easier to get the things you needed to make them, the raw materials. It made it easier to sell what you made, the final product, which meant that you want to make more things because it's even easier now. So the production is going to be boosted. So we need more trains to get all this out. And because the trains are going to keep doing that, it's going to make me want to produce more. And this just really set off, again, exponential growth was very, very, what was the word? Exponential growth was happening. It was happening all over the place in every single field. It was just shooting up. It was crazy. As I said, cities were popping up all over these railways. So they were just prime targets for new jobs, new factories. New jobs and factories are prime targets for new housing. And it just went from there. Communications. The electrical telegraph was made in 1844. It used Morse code, made by Mr. Morse. And this meant that I could now communicate with someone further than a neighborhood over by throwing some paper at a horse and hoping it made there within 3 days. I could just press a button, make letters, they get it. And it's all very nice because this is quite fast. It's electricity traveling at the speed of light. Do you know how much faster light is than a horse? At least significantly, I'd have to say. And 30 years later, Alexander Graham Bell, he's having just a grand time, and he makes the telephone. Now I don't even have to press button and hit the button at the right time. I open the phone, and all I have to do is say the right words. So now I can send very complex things, because no one wants to spend 3 hours pressing this button, waiting the other guy, hoping he gets it all, or his machine's going to type it out for 3 years. I just call him, what's poppin'? It's there. Everything is set. Here's a very, very early steam locomotive. As you can see, there's no one really in this. You just put it on there and it goes. It's going places. This was used to carry coal, because coal was very big in these steam engine things. And steam engine things were very big in general. Quite popular, I think you would find them. And this is a cotton gin. As I said before, I just get this big mound of cotton that I've picked up, and I'm like, I think I see some dirt there. Let me get that. Is that a seed? No, we don't want that in there. Now I throw it on that, and I just crank it. And then out comes some really nice, high-quality cotton. And that's what you like to see when you're making clothes. Reasons for where it was, the location. Why did it pop up where it popped up? Natural resources. Great Britain had a lot of coal, an inordinate amount of coal. So much coal was there, and you need coal for these steam engine things, and steam engines are needed to advance your power past. I put a spinny top in the river. So once this started spreading to Europe, it would become very obvious that Europe in general had this. Great Britain just had this a lot. China, there's some confusion or not really confusion, there's some question among people that don't know this yet as to why it started in Europe and not somewhere like China, because China definitely had the intellectual, entrepreneurial atmosphere that was required for this, that Great Britain definitely also had, but there was no coal there. So how are you going to start that up? Because the furthest you could get was a spinning top in the river, and that really isn't that crazy. It's pretty good, but it's not that crazy. China also didn't have any iron. Iron was massive for this. Because you know what iron makes? Iron makes steel. A man we'll call Mr. Bessemer made the Bessemer steel method. And that made steel just incredibly cheap. You basically just purified pig iron. And steel was needed for big buildings. It was needed for locomotives. It was needed for the train tracks the locomotives go on. It was needed for these new boats you've got. It was needed for these steam engine things. Steel was all over the place because it was much better than the iron they had. And it let them do all these crazy advanced things that nowhere else in the world really had the availability to do. Looking at Japan doing this, Japan didn't have any of this stuff either. That's why they didn't do it first. And they had to import everything, which is quite strange even looking at it today. They said they have to import a lot of food, which makes it really crazy that they were able to industrialize so successfully so early and become such a major player. Because they did not have really the capacity to do it, and they did it anyways. It was pretty crazy. The agricultural revolution closely preceded this in Great Britain, and this sheep went up by 8 times, I think. Agricultural output more than doubled. It was really quite good. And the reason that this was necessary is because if I'm expected to go to a city and work, I should expect that I'm not going to starve in that city. And the agricultural revolution made the surplus of food that was necessary for people to leave their farms and go to the city and get a wage job. You also see it through all of the agricultural revolution that it forced people off of it because of the enclosure movement part of it. I'll get to that in a second. I'm so sorry about that. Still sick. Didn't fix itself in 40 minutes. Capitalism. Capitalism was starting to do its thing in Europe. Adam Smith made On the Wealth of Nations, and that was the first real invisible hand usage, where it said there should be no rules. If I have money, I should be able to use the money how I want, because I will use that money to create something the people want, and that the people will pay for it, and I'll be able to make more things that the people want, and it will just drive the economy very well. So sorry. So these ideas really started brewing during the Enlightenment, which was significantly before. So by this point, everyone had time to really soak it in and say, yeah, I think I'm going to try it. I think that's a pretty good idea. I'm going to build a factory, by the way. So since this idea of I have this money, I'm going to do what I want with this money, was so prevalent, that meant that me, with my money, can go start a quite nice business, and the government isn't going to say, by the way, the taxes on this business is 100% give it. You could sort of do your own thing, and you could be expected to keep a fair amount of the profit, which incentivized people to do that thing. And now people were making factories and expecting people to go over there because I want money too. Now they have all these employees, and they can build more factories, and thank you, Invisible Hand, for factories. The Enclosure movement, that was definitely part of the agricultural revolution, but it was also quite distinct, not in the way of being something else. It was just very prevalent, important, as opposed to the very small parts of the agricultural revolution. And this started really in 1235, which is way before anything useful happens, but that was when you started to see the privatization of land. But for the most part, since like 1000, farming was done in the Great Britain on big fields, and you divide them into tiny strips, like 3 rows of crops each, and every family would own 1 row, and you would marry and get a new row. And these would not even be relatively close to each other. You're not going to trade John's row for your row over here because he's got one right next to it and you got one right next to his. I mean, because there's family ties to it. So you're not just going to do that. And it made farming incredibly inefficient. But the peasants seems to do it because it meant they didn't starve and there was nothing else they could really do. Now, this was very not beneficial to the actual act of agriculture because there's nothing stopping the weeds from John's plot from going to my plot, from going to Ezekiel's plot, just really having massive effect on a lot of families' yields. These things were so thin that it was very hard to use machinery to get through them because it's corn. What am I supposed to do with that? I can, like, maybe take one of those 2-handed saws and cut everything off it and then just throw it in there. And that's about as mechanized as it can get. Animals couldn't be controlled because you can't put a wall up because that wall's cutting into Jacob's strip, and he's not very happy with you because now he only has 2 rows of corn. And you know how hard it is to throw a 2-handed saw that's that big? It's pretty hard if you wanted to actually get the corn. So now there's animals eating your corn, and you can't do anything because otherwise Jacob's not going to have his corn. And you're in a very bad situation. The Enclosure movement stopped this by just saying, if you can prove you own land, you get to keep some land, but we're going to divvy it up into really big fields for every person. And all these family ties did not have any documentation, which meant you don't get your land, you don't get your land, you don't get your land, you don't get your land. You, Mr. Businessman, you get some land. Which meant that these like hundreds of peasants that all owned land was now taken down to 20 big fields, of which very few of them were present. So they couldn't stay there anymore. They had to go to the cities. Once you're in the cities, you can get a job and you can perpetuate more jobs. And it also meant that this farming thing became way more efficient because it's not a bunch of people with 3 things of corn in a long row of 20 that can't do anything with it. Weeds aren't spreading from everything. Your animals are where they're supposed to be because you can put a wall up now. It's very good. Oh, would you look at that? Yeah, productivity of crops doubled. Sheep breeding grew by 900% because now you don't have to worry, Mr. Businessman, if you are going to starve and die this winter. If you leave 3 sheep instead of 2, once you have 3 sheep, they can make babies and have 9 sheep instead of 8 like last year. Now you're keeping 4 sheep. That's pretty cool. And that next year you're keeping 6 sheep, and then you're keeping like 10 sheep, and it just goes up very quickly because now the people there aren't worried about dying. And this created a massive surplus of food along with the agricultural revolution that it coincided with. And if there's food, that means I don't have to be there growing my own food. So I can go to a city, I can work a factory. Impacts of location. Some of these are pretty far out, but they're going to be very good on your AP test. If you can name some really out there things like this, I'll talk on some more normal things. There's a couple normal things in here. First one's just colonialism. This is strictly talking about African colonialism. I'll speak on Asian while I'm here. There's a little thing called the Berlin Conference, which was in the late 1800s, in which European powers all went to Berlin, the important ones, and said, yeah, I want that bit of Africa. And the African leaders weren't there, so they couldn't say no to it. That just meant, I'm not going to take that bit of Africa, Mr. France, as me, Germany. You can have it, and I'm going to watch you go conquest that area, and now you hold it. So Africa then was divvied up and colonized for the natural resources, because my production can only go so far with what I have, and it's so easy with all these trains. I have so much more capacity. I just don't have the resources needed to make it. So if I go into Africa, there's all these people in Africa that can farm for me. There's all this oil in Africa. There's all these cool plants. They got rubber over there. They got chocolate. I don't know. They got all kinds of things. If you want it, Africa has it somewhere. Which meant that once they're there, they can produce whatever they want in massive numbers, because Africa is very resource rich. Quite an important thing, as I said, infrastructure built by the Europeans was not to help the Africans. It was definitely not to African citizens' advantage, because it wasn't designed to hold up a proper economy. It wasn't designed to hold up anything tertiary. You couldn't get good services with this. You couldn't set up nice factories with this. This was meant to go, here are the rubber trees, here is the coast, how do I get from these to here as fast as possible so I can bring it back to Britain? And once decolonization happened, this is what they were stuck with. All they were able to do is take this rubber, get it to the coast as quickly as possible, and sell it to someone. They couldn't set up an industry because there was nothing there for them. And that was pretty big for a while. Asian colonization was happening on a decent scale before the Industrial Revolution ever happened. All that was going on in Africa, really, was the UK was already like, South Africa's got some real nice weather, I think I'm going to take it. And that was all they really had. But Asia, Great Britain had a monopoly over everything on India. Their British or East India Company could basically do whatever they wanted. And then they started like actually saying we're colonizing it at some point. So they had all the cotton they wanted from there, because India makes a lot of cotton. They had all the people for labor they wanted from there. That was real easy. Portugal tried some stuff in Asia. Didn't work out too well because the UK said no. And the US wasn't really so much a resource farm as it was its own thing. They definitely got some resources going in the South, but in the north of the USA, that weren't colonized, they were very much being a European economy, and they were starting to produce goods for themselves and then selling those goods. So that doesn't really coincide very much here. But Asia and Africa definitely do. Here's a map. It's like 1914 Africa. Yes, 1914 Africa. You would later see Italy expanding its holds here. You would later see Germany not having any holds at all because they lost the First World War. Italy would get Ethiopia. 1936, yeah. I think this was obviously divvied up. The UK was very powerful. They got all of this. This has an incredible amount of resources. This was the best spot. France might look like they really won out here, but this is a big desert. This is completely useless right here. So they had a lot of space and nothing to do with it except for the stuff down here. And very high up here they could get some use out of. Spain really didn't get much out of this. There's some decent stuff here. Once you get down here, it's very resource dense. That's all you really got. Italy did not do well in the colonialism game at all. See, this is all desert. There's nothing useful for them here. This isn't that good. But it was all made. Even in areas like this that sucked, this worked out well for them because their resources happened to coincide with where they were. Building a big line from the important areas to the coast worked for them extremely well because there were only a couple important areas. It's exactly what they needed to industrialize. Somewhere like here, though, building a line from right here to right here would not bode well for the entirety of this country going anywhere after the Italians left. Manifest destiny. This was a U.S. thing. We're moving on from Europe. This was a quite prevalent belief as Americans expanded that the USA should just go from the Atlantic to the Pacific coast, and the Industrial Revolution gave them the ability to do that. Texas and a lot of the southwestern United States was gotten from Mexico because they hadn't industrialized yet. We had a lot more guns than them and a lot better guns than them. So we shot them a lot and we took it and we won several times. We got Texas. We got through their little Civil War thing. We took just the rest of it in the Mexican-American War. When we were expanding, there were these Native American tribes, so we had a series of wars with them, and we beat them because they weren't even really close to industrializing. They usually just traded for muskets or used bows and arrows. That didn't really bode well for them in the end. We had the economic capability to just buy Louisiana from Napoleon because he was getting quite desperate anyways. But if we were like real poor, we still couldn't have done that. We just said, hey, Napoleon, I hear you suck. We have money. And we did have money because we industrialized and we bought it from him. We gained half of the Oregon territory that was compromised with Canada. Canada was backed by the British, so you'd have to be quite good to have any influence or say in the situation. But we could say, yeah, we're splitting the half and half. I know you want all of it. You know we want all of it. I don't care. We're splitting it. You can't have all of it. And you have to be quite up there to be able to say that to Britain and not get your teeth kicked in. Here's just Manifest Destiny kind of illustrated. Oregon territory, it went up like all this stuff. We said, we're just going to cut it right here. I said, all right, bought all this. I don't know why this is pink. We bought all this from Napoleon. This was Spanish, and we said, give it. And they were like terrified, and they said, all right, we're going to give it. This was taken from the French in the French and Indian War, and then taken from the English in the American Revolution. All that nice stuff. I'm pretty sure we just bought this stuff. That's how you do it. Sequods and purchase. You just buy things. It's definitely Mexican-American War stuff. It's like Texan Revolution, all that nice things. All those nice things. Japan. As I said, Japan got pretty cranky after they industrialized because they looked over at China and they said China's been on top for so long, but at the same time, their industry is banging two sticks together until one of them turned into a shirt. Meanwhile, Japan was quite advanced, so they just thought, let's go to war with them and we're going to win. First Sino-Japanese War, that was the very late 1800s, in which Japan said, we want Korea. China said, no, we want Korea. And then Japan just absolutely decked them. They just drop-kicked him out a window, as was a bit of a theme for a while. And this really set off Japan's colonial ambitions because they said, yeah, not only did we think we could beat China, that was quite a boost. We did it. We just straight up did it. Look at this big country. They are nothing. There's nothing in that country. The most valuable parts of those trade ports the Europeans took. We're just going to keep doing this. And so they kept doing it. The Second Sino-Japanese War, 1937 to 1945, went a little bit worse than the first one. At this point, Japan had Manchukuo, which is very northern China. It's a bit that does that. They had Manchukuo, just west of there. And they held a little bit south of that, not a significant amount. And they obviously had Korea from the last one. And they said, you know what? I'm kind of sick of China. What if we just replaced them with more Japan? And so they did it. This was just going to be the end all. I believe so. Japan's right here, and they say, China, hand you over. And China said no, and Japan said okay, and really quickly blitzed through a lot of them, and then stopped. They took the capital. There was this thing called the Rape of Nanking, which wasn't that cool. But then everyone intervened and said, Japan, remember those tanks you have? Remember those cars you use? Those things that use oil? Remember how you have to buy all your things because your country doesn't have anything in it? Well, we're not selling it to you anymore. And Japan said, oh. So that made them go into panic mode. And their response was to invade the Dutch East Indies. But the Dutch were allied with the British. So they do invade British colonies in Asia. But the Americans are very closely aligned with the British. So they bombed Pearl Harbor. And then they took the Philippines. They blitzed through all of that. They almost got China, but China said, yeah, no. And they started actually beating them. And the communists in China went on the 100 Regiments offensive, and that was pretty good until it petered out. And then they just largely pushed them back. And then Russia said, yeah, lol, and invaded Manchukuo and gave that to the communists because they're Russia. What did you expect? America did their island hopping campaign and dropped 2 fat nukes on them. It really didn't go that well. So Japan fails. They are not a colonial power anymore. They are Japan. And this is the end of all their ambitions. After, one good swing, it all came crashing down. It was a nice try, I guess. And China took over as the dominant Asian power once again after they industrialized. And they're pretty big. They're a world power at this point. Like Japan used to be. Well, I say used to be. Japan's still a world power, but they're not on China levels. And they're not on 1940s Japan levels. Of influence, at least. Here's a map of Sino-Japanese Wars. This is in the middle of the conflict. This is not any peace deals. But yeah, as you can see, this is not what the Japanese would have wanted, or the Chinese would have wanted here. Japan just whooped quite easily. It wasn't really that big. China was kind of pushover. Here's them towards a lot of their height. And then a lot of these naval invasions, as you can see. And they just had a massive navy, so why would they not do naval invasions? They were industrials. They can build a massive navy just like the UK did, just like China did later, just like the US had. And they pushed quite far in, as you can see. Practice questions. We're here. We're at the last little bit. These 3 practice questions. That's pretty crazy. What notable revolution preceded the Industrial Revolution? Seeing as it's just the VOD people, you and the VOD, I'm going to give you your pause time now. That was some really quality pause time. I really felt the quality of the pause time, I would go so far as to say. And moreover, I felt the quality of your great answer. So, obviously, with me just sensing the quality, just radiating off of your answer, you know what it is, and it is the Agricultural Revolution. The second one, to be specific, the first one was a little bit before, 10,000 BC. We're off by a couple, maybe a few weeks. The second one was significantly later than that. It very, very closely preceded the Industrial Revolution. Next question, what are some factors other than the Agricultural Revolution that contributed to the Industrial Revolution, and how did they do so? There's a lot of answers here. There's a lot of paths you can take. I can't tell you all the right answers, but I can tell you that you should pause and think now. And we're back. You've unpaused the video, as otherwise you would not hear me telling you that you've unpaused the video. Remember this little bit from earlier? We're doing it again. Some things that really led to it. You could say the Enclosure movement, because it is distinct in its own little way. The Agricultural Revolution. You can say the natural resources that were just abundant in Britain. They were everywhere. You could throw a stick in the ground, pick the stick up, and it would be just black with coal. It was all over the place. And that let them get those steam engines, get those railways going. There's all kinds of answers here. If you can justify it, it's probably right. I'll be real with you. Final question. We're here at the very end. Now, this is epic. What are some notable impacts of the Industrial Revolution? How are they connected to the Industrial Revolution? Again, there's a lot of answers here. They're pretty cool, and you should think of at least one of those answers now. And you've done it. You've thought of a brilliant answer, just stunning, and I can't wait to hear it. I've heard it. It was great. There's so many paths you can take with this one. You can take one of the ones from the slides, or you can be, real big brain show off, and you could do almost anything. World War I was absolutely caused by the Industrial Revolution. You can connect it to the Second World War if you do a little bit of bending around. You could definitely justify that. Obviously, the Sino-Japanese Wars were one I mentioned. You could say the Russo-Japanese War. You could say the not the Napoleonic Wars. Stop me before. You could probably say the Napoleonic Wars. There's a lot of things you could say here. You could say, obviously, if Napoleonic Wars going on, the War of 1812, all of that. If it's a war that happened after this, there's probably a big connection, and that's something you should note. You could get into the Second Agricultural Revolution, get into a lot of rebellions, not rebellions, revolts. I would say a lot of big strikes happened to this, and there was a lot of uncertainty. Communism was definitely born out of this because as the country advances, everyone gets richer, but the gap between the normal people and the richest grows a lot. Normal people are growing like this, rich people are growing like this. So here we're pretty close, but over here we're just worlds apart. And Karl Marx didn't like that and wanted to try and represent it to everyone. And people tried it and didn't go very well. It was a bit of a flop, honestly. But it was absolutely caused by it. And so you could also say the October Revolution, stuff like that's directly related to communism. There's a lot of paths here. But, alas, we've reached the end of the lesson. Now it is just recap. Maybe you've forgotten something that you see here on this timeline. Go, watch it again. For it is me teaching it. What a great moment. Teaching. Yeah, as we obviously went through pre-stream knowledge, I guess you can check this out again if you want. Think if you can go. Big brain on any questions. Start of the Industrial Revolution. Hopefully you didn't miss any of that stuff. Growth and diffusion, new technologies. Reasons for where it was. It's pretty important. That's probably one of the biggest takeaways from the stream. Make sure you got that down. Impacts of location. Pretty good to know. Practice we just went through. Q&A. There's no one here watching, I don't believe. Yeah, there's no one here. So Q&A isn't going to happen. But do make sure. I know I told you. Look, I told you at the beginning of the stream, you had to go follow Think5 on social medias, and here you are. You still haven't done it. What are you doing? How did you mess up this badly? Look, it's simple. You go on Twitter, you go on Instagram, you go on YouTube. I don't care. Do all three of them at the same time. You type in Think5able, and you follow them. You subscribe to them. It's that simple. You can't look at me and say, what's Think5able social media? Because it's right here. It's Think5able. What's Fiveable social media? It's Fiveable. Not Twitter, Instagram. It's Think5able. It's all the same. I don't know how you haven't done it yet. All you got to do is follow them, and you can't do anything else. You're here to follow Think5able on everything. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, do it. And so, here we are. The very end. It is time to no more streaming. As sad as it may be, we must go. You watching on the VOD, I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you've learned immense amounts from the stream. I hope you continue to learn immense amounts in your class and you absolutely bombing the exam. You don't bomb the exam. You bombing the exam. And now the exam bombing has been bombed and there's no exam to bomb. The exam is gone, but you still got a 5 on it. Congratulations on your 5 on the exam.